my name is. We have a special guest, one of my long-term friends, maybe one of my older friends in crypto now, Aaron Lammer.
I'm definitely one of your older friends chronologically in life age.
By years, one of my older crypto friends. Not in real life. I'm an old soul. I got a bunch of old man friends.
I think I was in a chat with some young men last night where football was being discussed, and I referenced that I was a Niners fan and had grown up with Joe Montana being my quarterback, and I think people may have jaws still being on the floor on that one.
Listen, you got to be a little bit careful when you're saying I was in a chat last night with some young men.
Especially when you got a green screen behind you.
Yeah, just say it. You need to be a little cautious about that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's great to have you. You were the host of. Do we have to put that in past tense now? Coin Talk. The host of Coin Talk, I was the first ever guest, but it was also one of my favorite crypto podcasts because it's like crypto podcasts for normies. You and Jay King ran that together. And then of more acclaim and journalistic integrity, you also created the Exit Scam podcast, which was a limited series podcast about Quadriga. And you went as deep as anybody in this ecosystem on what happened at Quadriga, which was super cool. And you've been in crypto since 2017, right?
I think so. Maybe 2016 even. So I don't really remember the years very well. I can only look at Bitcoin price and remember when things happened, but somewhere around there.
Yeah. And then somebody in the chat said, "Welcome to Top Signals." That's a good name for a podcast.
Yeah.
Just FYI, you should take that, Kingfish. And then let's see. There was something else about your crypto. Oh, you for people that are unaware, you also were on an episode of Up Only, you and Taylor Moynihan from My Crypto now. Now she's at MetaMask.
Yeah.
And I think we were also talking about Quadriga for that show, right?
She's also a seasoned Quadriga detective. Sometimes I'll still hit her up with like, Taylor, have you ever like looked at blah blah? And she's like, let it go.
Yeah. At this point, the authorities need to just take over and do their thing.
I think I'm not positive about this, but I think that there was some money that went out to Quadriga creditors, which is an interesting narrative to discuss potentially here, which is, I think we're starting to be in the countdown to FTX creditors potentially seeing some big cents on the dollar.
Yeah, so our hope today, and we'll talk charts and whatnot a little bit too, but this version of Weekly Open, if people are unaware, a few weeks ago, we talked about trying to mix things up a little bit more with Weekly Open and have a rotation of friends. And so Aaron and I might talk a little less price action. We'll still do some charts, but I wanted to dig in on what's going on with the Solana ecosystem, the Solana trade. So let's start there, and then we'll dig into the more typical, Bitcoin and ETH charts and whatnot. But the Solana trade, I mean, it bottomed with the FTX failure, right? About $8, and then, but still just underperformed and was pretty depressed for quite a long time. Was $15 just a few months ago, and now has had this run up to about $75. And instead of digging into, well, here's a tick by tick of what the candles did, what's going on here? Like, where are the tokens? Like, there were a lot of tokens lost. There's a lot of tokens stuck. There's a lot of funds that got wrecked. But then, Solana people were still building. So what's your lay of the land?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I went to Solana Breakpoint. I went to the first one, and I just went to the third one, but I didn't go to the second one in the middle. And the second one in the middle, people were on flights back, and FTX happened. Like, really? FTX happened like during the Solana conference, more or less. I think some people like didn't get out because they like didn't have Wi-Fi because they were flying back from Solana Breakpoint.
Wow.
So I was sort of like talking to some teams, talking to people in it during the last year. And there was definitely a moment like approximately 1 year ago where a lot of teams were like, should we pack it up? Should we there was talk about like Aptos, like basically where these people are going to go. I think some went to Cosmos. And it was definitely, like, in my opinion, as left for dead as an ecosystem possibly can be. There was like the feeling also, I think, that there was like this huge overhang of tokens from FTX that, like, man, if you buy this thing, like, you're just waiting for the FTX estate to dump on you.
Mm.
At some point, and I honestly don't know, like, I'm still trying to figure out what was the sentiment shift that allowed this to happen. I mean, part of it may be like it's kind of exciting to see a token like hit 2x off the bottom, and then it hits 3x off the bottom, and then like people start getting excited. But my experience has been that like the people who are like ideological builders on Solana are pretty resilient, and I attribute some of that to the fact that it's pretty difficult to port like a Solana project over to EVM. Like
Mm.
you pretty much had to
Different
like
code base.
literally give up if you
Yeah.
wanted to. And I also know a lot of people raised at the top and had a lot of like treasury funds. So it was like I talked to teams that were like, hey, we have like 17 users, but we have enough runway for 4 years. And we don't want to give the money back to the investors, so we're just going to keep building. And the people who did that have done like very well because there aren't like a ton of protocols on Solana. Like if you go on Solana right now and you like pull open Jupiter and look at the list of tokens you can buy, it's like not that many folds. It's like there aren't that many things happening. So the things that were happening, we're able to get attention as it like came back. And the user counts are still like really low. Like if you look on some of these leaderboards of Solana protocols, it's like well under 10,000 wallets, sometimes not that many more than 1,000 wallets. So I'm curious, like, what do you think? Like, what do you think allowed people to feel comfortable like coming back into what was called a dead chain?
I think I think it throughout the bear there was a lot of this like, hey, people are still showing up to hackathons, people are still building, and granted, I was pretty outside of that. Like, I don't do a lot of in person events for one thing, but even just but it felt a lot like what people said about Ethereum in 2018, 2019, and all of a sudden DeFi pops out of it. And this time, I think what's interesting is you're still talking kind of alternatives to other chains with compute, right? Like there's EVM, all the things, but as a completely different platform that you gain that much traction, and there's people excited about it, and they have real reasons for why they want to, code on using Rust driven programs and on Solana for various reasons was pretty interesting. But then when it came time to like, hey, I asked like, what are the most interesting things on Solana? It's like bonk, 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 like some other token, bonk, 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 bonk. It's
Yeah.
like, are there any like I kind of lost it I lost the signal because it was only memes coming back at me. And to contrast this a little bit, or to compare it to something, you kind of see that with AVAX too, like where it's just 90% meme tokens or maybe more. And how do you find like what are the things that are actually really awesome products? And I realize now that somebody's going to clip me just saying bonk over and over again. But
I
it,
think,
it
sorry,
yeah,
guys.
I think seeing the real stuff get built is important, even if the memes outperform.
So I think we are starting to see that stuff, but it's like I think DeFi Summer is the right like parallel because you could have come in for DeFi Summer and be like, "Oh, tomato coin, beef coin, this
Yeah,
is really fucking stupid,"
yeah,
right?
rebasing yams.
Yeah, we're about right there. Like,
Yeah.
and so some of the things are bonk, 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 bonk. You can get me on that too. I got the green screen, so you can do something horrific to me if you
Just
want. And we also have these like airdrops where like people who are even like very, very light market participants, I've always used Solana as like just an exploratory thing. Like I never had serious money on it. Like after FTX, it was really hard to move SPL token. Like there was no easy way to even get tokens over to SPL, and I am not a wormhole fan. So like I've
Yeah.
always like looked at it as like a tourist destination, not like a place where I'm really doing stuff. But so you have like the bonk, 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 and then you have these airdrops. And these airdrops mean that even people who were like just dicking around now have some money to dick around with, which is again like very Uniswap 1 inch airdrop era vibes.
1 inch.
Yeah,
I liked the 1 inch airdrop.
the
It
one
was
inch
supposed
one
to
inch
be
airdrop.
for, what did they call it? Moon something? Mooniswap. It was
Well,
Mooniswap, and then
well,
you ended up getting 1 inch instead.
we'll have to do like a trivia feature where you name various like previous names of tokens, and we try to remember what they are. So there's money coming into the ecosystem, and some of the stuff, like some of I think what was happening early was people sort of front running some of these airdrops, right? Pith says it's going to airdrop. Jito says that it's an airdrop, even though Solana is like pretty underpopulated. Like Pith is like jump. It's a bunch of people with like big bags. There's still like big bags supporting the ecosystem. And
Yeah.
so I think some of the early run of Sol was people who saw that coming and were like, okay, I want to be catching some of this stuff. Like there's going to be an injection of interest and money into the ecosystem. I'll say like I underestimated that by tenfold. Like I was like, Jito could come out and be like 20 cents, you guys. Like the degree to which it's going crazy also feels like DeFi summer, where it's like fun, fun, fun. Oh my God, like these things are really going pretty nuts now. But I think actually, like some of the products are pretty interesting. Like Jito is a pretty interesting product, like combining staked soul stuff with MEV gains. Like as far as I know, that product is not available on Ethereum right now. You can't like stake and get MEV for your validators. Someone's going to tell me I'm wrong in the chat probably. But so
I'm gonna start like pulling some of these up while we're talking.
And Jito is like, a pretty, oh, Dale just told me I'm wrong. Jito is like a fairly like new thing. Like Marinade was like basically like the default staked soul for like quite a while. Jito came out, had a point system. A lot of people started piling on that Jito point system. Marinade then pumped because it looked like Jito was going to be valuable, and that meant like comparatively Marinade was valuable. Blaze, B-Sol,
These are just words to me, by the way. I'm like a total.
okay, so B-Sol, M-Sol, and Jito Sol are like the top 3 staked forms. So that's your like Lido, Rocket. I don't know what are like the top
Yeah.
Ethereum staking pools.
That's really it.
Coinbase. But yeah, exactly. There's CB ETH. Someone says I'm wrong.
The thing with Jito, the thing with Jito though is that it's liquid staking and has some kind of MEV component built in.
Jito has like built-in MEV, so it like theoretically yields slightly more than the other staked options.
Gotcha.
So I'd say the other big development that I'm sort of keeping an eye on is Fire Dancer, which is like a update to the Solana validator clients that's going to supposedly like 10x or 100x or I don't know how many x the throughput of Solana and speed.
I just thought you were talking about coin prices. It's like I'm excited about this thing that's going to 10x. It's like, yeah, same. If you know that, holler at me.
So there's an interesting thing going on for all of these like major validators like Marinade and Jito, because I believe that Jito will not actually run on Fire Dancer, or they're going to have to do a specific fork. So just basically like interesting stuff happening and new stuff, right? Like Fire Dancer is not a narrative that applies to the EVM world. Fire Dancer is like this validator update by Jump. So does this all lead anywhere? I have no idea. Is there like stuff happening that's new that could potentially like push the ecosystem forward? Like definitely. The Jupiter airdrop is coming. Pretty much if you use Solana.
I want to learn about Jupiter in a second. Yeah. But Pith is an oracle. So
it's an oracle.
These are the Link Marines of Solana.
Well, they're not quite like the Link Marines, because Pith is like jump, and a bunch of like Wall Street trading firms are mostly behind it. So it's a different flavor. It's a
Yeah, less
different
Russian.
kind of a token. But yes, it's I think Switchboard and Pith are the two biggest oracles on Solana, and Pith in the lead by quite a while. I think Pith went down yesterday during that market stuff when Bitcoin dumped. So
Gotcha.
still some reasons for caution.
And then what was the one that you said just you talked about Marinade, but I don't remember what that one was.
Marinade is MSOL, so it's the governance token for the what before Jito was pretty much the only show in town for liquid staking.
Gotcha. So a liquid staking alternative. And then you were
Yep.
just talking about something that you're interested in.
Jupiter.
Jupiter. Yeah, that's right. The one that doesn't have a token yet.
Jupiter
So,
does not have a token, but they have announced a token, and you can look up your wallet address and see what you will be getting. And Jupiter is
so
like,
you just don't know what the value is going to
you
be.
don't know what the values be, and you don't know exactly when it's happening. They haven't said exactly when it's going to happen. Jupiter, people will say it's the Uniswap of Solana. I think that there's some important differences there. Jupiter does not have liquidity pools, so it's really like more like the
Order book.
0x protocol
Oh, it's
of
like a
Solana.
RFQ process.
Yeah, so or it's matcha basically,
Yeah.
and I'm just cursed the token by this comparison, probably. Sorry.
But you excited me as a real matcha
I
fan.
know it would be the one you would be into, but
you've double cursed it.
but Jupiter, I mean, it's like a 1 inch or a matcha, except they're building a bunch of other stuff. So it's got limit orders, it's got dollar cost averaging, and they just launched perps on it. So you could be
Okay.
like it's matcha, but you could also be like it's GMX.
It's
It's
like
like
all
it's
in one on chain trading.
exactly.
Whatever gets the order done.
And so the airdrop is going to apply to basically anyone who traded on Jupiter, which is like everyone who's ever traded on Solana. So it's another one where it's like if you did anything, you've probably interacted with Jupiter.
Yeah. For what it's worth, Matcha did just release some new stuff where I think it uh, does some of the limit order type stuff as well, and also cross chain. And I mean, I'm assuming some of the Ethereum based trading apps are feeling the heat, because even if they still have a lot of the volume or TVL or whatever, they might be like have resting on their laurels a little bit, where it seems like there's more innovation happening on Solana because people are just YOLOing and let's do stuff and break things and whatnot. And whereas ETH feels like a more safe maybe place to do stuff, but Solana is doing more experimentation, and some of those experiments will work really well. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, an interesting place to look is like at the dumbest end of the market. So I look at like the VT2 pools of like people like, launching meme coins that have like 6-hour half-lives, right? Why are people still doing this on UniV2? It's like pretty expensive to run these on there. And there's this whole ecosystem of like sniper bots and Telegram bot kind of stuff that services that. Could that move over to say Jupiter pretty seamlessly, like no fees? Like some of these games would be like interesting to run and on other chains. And I think the lock-in is mostly like the Uniswap sort of infrastructure and Uniswap LP pools. On Solana, you've got Orca pools. Orca pools are basically World pools are basically V3, and regular Orca pools are V2. So it's not hard to imagine that you could port a lot of these things over. And yeah, I would definitely be feeling the heat. I mean, as a mental model, I'm gonna like anger some people with this, but like we've talked about it, like there is a mental model that last cycle's Ethereum is this cycle's Solana, and like the relationship between Solana and ETH is last cycle's ETH BTC, where people are like, no way, no way, no way, and then there's like some capitulation that happens sort of like after like DeFi summer, where people are like, I guess I got to be on Solana.
I mean, I love ETH, but I don't think that's an unreasonable take at all. I'm also not like a maxi of anything crypto.
Yeah.
You there's something else I had for you, but I'm being distracted by people saying "Gib Matcha airdrop." In which case, I will retire because I think I had to be pretty high on their user list. But I love matcha. But I think what's interesting is like matcha was in ETH terms like one of the best on-chain trading experiences for a user. And what I think some of these Solana apps seem to be working really hard on is a more seamless user experience, like not have to sign 10 things and wait 10 minutes every time and just be able to go do stuff. I
I
haven't really heard you talk any about Sam coins because I'm just thinking back to some of the coins where it's like, oh yeah, this is an order book exchange on Solana, or this is this or that. And it's like Sam or FTX related entities or friends or whatever owned 90% of the token. And they were these super high FDV, but limited supply on the market type coins. But some of the same narratives were what you're talking about. Have those disappeared? Are they still out there with their massive valuations? How's this like hanging over the Solana market?
I'm actually curious. I have not followed, like, this narrative has been sort of backburnered. Pull up the Serum chart. How does Serum look now? I feel like Serum is the one I know the best of this. And Serum was supposed to be this like super sophisticated, like Jane Street nerd matching engine that everyone could use. And I'm curious how Serum's done.
Yeah, we're gonna look it up. SRM Serum. Is it even? There it is. Wow, is this not even listed anywhere anymore?
I mean, it was almost all the stuff was mostly listed on FTX. I mean,
yeah, this is on Mexi now.
It pumped off the bottom, it looks like,
so
but
6 cents.
It
used to be at
it was like
$14
at the top.
I feel like I need to take this out of log so that we can see how close to zero it actually is. Things really change when you take them out of log.
Yeah. So when I think about the Solana user experience, like I'm not interested in like extremely elaborate like order book setups. I think it is good for that, but like I think about the feeling like when you click the mouse, does the UI react? Like that feeling that we get used to with the iPhone of like almost a physics level response to clickiness. That is an experience you can get on Solana, where basically as you click, like something happens on chain. And that feeling, even on the faster L2s, I've never really gotten that sort of like clicky user experience. People have like said that like Solana is the iPhone and Ethereum is Android, which sounds like an insult, but I think there's like something to like, yeah, like Ethereum is more modular. There's like L2s, there's different EVM environments. It's more spread out. Solana is probably like closer to the user experience like a normie outside of crypto would be looking for. And a lot of this stuff comes down to like what your first experience was. Like to me, Ethereum still feels very native. I'm like mostly interested in Ethereum. But if I came for the first time now and experienced both without any sort of like prior history, I could see like being like, hey, I kind of had more fun over in the Solana zone. When I was at that very first Solana conference, the thing I remember the most was meeting young people, young men, callback, who basically had come to crypto through Solana and had like basically no knowledge of crypto history or really understanding of what was going on in Ethereum. And like Bitcoin, like these guys couldn't pass like the simplest Bitcoin quit. These guys like don't really even know like what proof of work is. It's like you merged onto the freeway at a much later entrance, and all that stuff's just unimportant to you. It's hard for us as like old veterans to think this stuff doesn't matter, but there's stuff from before I was there. You know, like I know lots of like ETH guys who don't really know about the like block size wars or care, and like that's fine. You know, they don't.
It's just a generational thing that is normal.
They're not going to get a joke I make about Bitcoin Diamond. It's okay.
Oh man, yeah. The Bitcoin forks, for what it's worth, I wonder like if the Luke Dash Juniors are powerful enough to force Bitcoin fork type wars again, because that would be great meta. Like I would really enjoy it.
I think it's got to happen. Like the seeds of that war have already been planted, and the characters are definitely not people who are going to like take the harmonious, peaceful way out. Like when you have like rumors around going that you eat cats, they're not going to like. There was a thing where like when Luke Dash Jr. was talking about eating cats, like he has cat. People are like he cages and eats cats. I'm not saying he does that. I'm not saying that's true, but like if you just look at the personalities involved, it's like right back to the block size wars, the like Roger Ver kind of personas, where it's just
Yeah.
like this person's not going to bury the
Except for
hatchet.
now, they're all way less rich than Roger Ver. Yeah. Another Solana thing that I talked a little bit about the developer ecosystem and like programming on Rust. Do you think it's been real that brought in people that just wanted to write code and they understood writing code with Rust, whereas the EVM has all these eccentricities and it's like JavaScript but worse, and non-framework, and doesn't have a lot of like helpful frameworks to package all that up and make it easy on developers, whereas Solana seems to work on that developer experience a little more. And Ethereum's come a long way, but like early Ethereum, that's where a lot of the problems came from. Is that you just had there was no like wrapper and packaging from a developer perspective to make some of that simpler. And so, do you think that's been part of what's made Solana exciting for developers?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I remember Jump had like a boot camp for like getting up to speed on Rust development, and they just showed a picture where they had like 100 of the like nerdiest like Stanford dudes, like locked in a windowless room, like teaching them Rust. Like doing things like that does have an effect projected out a couple years. They're attracting really, really good devs, and some of those devs are a little like, again, like thinking about sort of generationally, like most of the Ethereum devs are people who both like got rich off of Ethereum and are pretty like ideologically attached to Ethereum. I think that like Rust is better at attracting people who maybe aren't even super into crypto, but are kind of just like looking at something to hack on that they can like get funding and like mess around. And I've seen like a lot of like Solana teams that are just like very like high level, like Giga Chad kind of developer dudes who probably didn't get shook out as easily as I would have. Like if I had been a Solana dev, I would have quit straight up. I don't have that kind of like fortitude to like pass through it. But I don't think that those people were necessarily as bummed out by the FTX stuff because they had just kind of randomly chosen Solana in the first place because they wanted to like make products on Rust. Like I think it's just generational in the same way there's like generations for investors, there's generations for devs. And I think that Solana, like if you're graduating from college right now, like Solana has like a significant chance of capturing your interest over like EVM development.
I'm too far away from the programming world these days to understand fully like where the different alignments exist. But Posture Check in the chat says Rust is closer to a religion than most crypto communities.
Yep.
So that's good. It's kind of like religion stacking from a code and a blockchain perspective. So you probably have some pretty sticky market participants in Solana if they're already like very, very pro Rust and they get interested in crypto. It seems like a pretty native place for them to want to exist.
Falling in love with like a dev stack rather than falling in love with like a bag you have is like an interesting place to be. I don't think there's a lot of people who are like in love with their soul bags. I think most of the people who are there are like, I'm here for the stuff that's still coming. And Solana itself, not like, you know,
Well, people
like
definitely fall in love with their bags when they're up.
yeah, well, I mean, this is like this is the like dating period, and some people are about to fall in love with their bags, and we'll check back in like Q2 2024 where things are at. Like there's pain to come. Someone asked in the chat, do you think Solana has a real shot at breaking an all-time high this cycle? I think it does, but I think it like kind of needs to come, like it came through the fire in terms of the FTX stuff, but it's never really like experienced like some of the like existential crises that you have in something like Ethereum. Like there's got to be some like catastrophes and panics on the horizon. Usually, like historically with Solana, that's been like chain downtime, problems like
How about that transition? Chain downtime, and I switched to the Solana incident page like right away. I had to butt in. I'm sorry.
I mean, I literally could have for a minute. I thought you were going to show me that it was down right now because like
No,
Pith
no.
was down last night, like during the crash. So like, I still think we're like going to have some moment where like the market crashes and the oracles don't. connect and people lose a lot of money in perps. Those kind of things are still on the horizon.
Yeah, and wasn't there a time like, and I have to remember, but like, yeah, mainnet beta outage. This was June 2022, and this
Ooh.
when Kyle made the beta comment, like Kyle Samani and stuff like that's not great, right? Where the whole chain is just gone. Like if you have to have information through your relayer and your Oracle and all this stuff, and it's like that they're you're gonna get liquidated. What do they do? Like
I
what do
mean,
they do?
it's cool to have limit orders, but if those limit orders don't file because the oracle's up, people aren't just mad; they're double mad. Like people are
They're broke.
aware with Ethereum that shit is what works and what doesn't work. Solana is in some ways claiming more stuff will work than works currently on Ethereum, like limit orders. You can't. It's difficult to do on-chain limit orders. You end up doing these like weird, like cow swap kind of killer fill orders, but that creates greater pressure for the chain to perform under fire and greater like chances of like catastrophe. So I don't necessarily think all of these unique features are all going to be like roses. Like there's going to be some
Yeah.
stuff. I remember someone posted a screen grab when the phone came out. They like rented a storefront in Manhattan for the Solana phone, and it had like a display that had like the current TPS of Solana on it, and the chain went down during the launch day, and they had like basically a big projection that said 0 TPS. Like we're not more than a year removed from some terrible optics moments.
Yeah. And then, I mean, 4.5 hours on that June 2022 outage of mainnet. That's a long time. Like Ethereum, okay, you say, well, it's $1,000 to transact when it was peak. That's not good either.
Yep.
But your blocks still kept going, you know.
Yep.
Um,
I got a
Bitcoin
question
every
for
now and
you.
then you'll tie up a block for an hour where it's supposed to be 10 or 15 minutes. Like that's not good, but they did still keep going. There was still, there were servers out there working to solve the problems, and it wasn't down. Like being down as a serious blockchain is the problem. So, I'm not trying to belittle it or anything like that, but I'm just wondering to what degree does that impose this existential risk to where it can kind of lose this momentum of being a serious player. Do you think they're past most of that?
No. I mean, I think they're past the problems of the past, but when you start talking about jumping up to Fire Dancer and like turbocharging the whole thing, you have people doing a lot of what amounts to testing and prod. Like the reason that Solana went down in the first place is they're pretty aggressive. Like I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here. Like I think Tolly would say the same thing. Like they're pretty aggressive at pushing like updates to the clients. They're pretty aggressive about like fuck it, like it's running, let's go for it. And historically that's both caused some problems and also probably like pushed innovation on the chain. But would I put like a large like a limit order that I'm relying on and assume that it's going to like perform in a crash? I'd be pretty worried about that.
Yeah.
That said, at the same time, like Solana really wants that like high frequency trading, like TradFi activity to come to their chain. Like that's in some ways like the maxi case for Solana is that we move all this stuff there because it's fast enough, has enough high enough throughput. So definitely we're gonna like have a trial by fire this year, and I'm not positive what I think is gonna happen.
Yeah, Robin in the chat says servers always go down in non-crypto products. People don't care if it comes back on. That's bullcrap. Like in TradFi trading products, one, there's more resolution capacity in a non-blockchain product, and number two, uptime is really quite good on like core infrastructure. If the stock market goes down for 4 hours,
Yeah.
it's international like craziness. Like it is not an unserious problem.
And if you fuck up, you get shunned out of the system. I mean,
Right.
that's like the tolerance in TradFi is like cool. Like we work with dedicated brokers, dedicated channels, and if one of them has downtime during a crash, we'll try and claw back the money and never speak to these fuckers again.
Yeah,
Like
and for what it's worth, to give you a little bit more credit, like you've worked professionally in crypto and within like TradFi or organizations that were doing crypto stuff, DeFi stuff full time,
Yep.
running a DeFi team, even doing like, some VC related stuff. So you've actually been with those people, and what did they take seriously, right?
They are like they're not like shopping the market for their stack. Like they have like their infrastructure is like, I think about like how locks work. People say it's hard to break into the home lock industry because people only replace their locks every 20 years or something. The way that TradFi, high frequency trading, market making firms work is they build their tech stack and then they want to stay on that tech stack because it costs millions of dollars to rewrite their code. And their code isn't just trade execution, it's also things like back office functions, right? So it's very sticky once you get it. But if you fuck up, they're not going to be like, cool, come back in like 6 months when you've like improved the product, right? It has to be ready for
Yeah.
prime time. So I
Here's a
think
hard fork of everything we've done, and you have to rewrite all your internal programming, like to be compatible. That's not a happy place.
that is not, these are people who like work on a P&L basis, and like dev is just negative P&L. There's no like budget for R&D. It comes out of like trading profits. So
Yeah.
people are very demanding of their partners in those situations. And if you're become a trusted partner, you can make a lot of money pretty easily, right? Because like some of the software is pretty old that people are using a lot. But
Yeah.
I see a lot of people who are potentially going to be competing for, being that bridge of TradFi coming into faster trading and crypto. SEA is another one that is getting some
Hmm.
attention. I think that's former
Which is
Goldman
not to
Sachs.
be confused with
Not,
Sui.
not Sui, Say.
I say Sui like pig, like
Yeah.
Arkansas Razorback.
A lot of people in the chat seem to be interested in whether Sol is going to revisit all-time highs, which, we like,
We
yeah,
can, yeah, we'll talk price in just a minute, but before we do, I did want to ask you, like, is there anything else that I need to be paying attention to in terms of ecosystem stuff? One of which, though, I think, and I'm curious if you think it's serious, is bringing some of these products and taking some of the speed and getting it ported back to the kind of a EVM compatibility. Tolly was talking about essentially Solana as an ETH layer 2 the other day, and how important do you think that type of stuff is?
to me that's been like all vaporware so far. Like Neon was supposed to do it. They were supposed to be like the EVM Sol thing, and like I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen anything like this will be the year, I guess, if it's going to happen. Right now, even bridging, I would say, is somewhat primitive. Like Solana is desperate to become like a layer 0 stop, right? Because right now you're pretty much,
Win.
what's that?
Win Stargate.
So, right now you're pretty much limited to like wormhole, which I think is kind of usually a bad user experience and has weird issues with like wrapping across different chains where you can end up bridging a token that's like not liquid on the when it arrives. Like I'll just say for the listeners, like be careful with your like wormhole bridging. So it's not even easy to like bridge over right now, much less build like truly like compatible applications that work on both. I think that's definitely like a narrative to watch this year. The other narratives I think that I'm interested in are someone just said Synapse added a bridge from ETH to Sol. Yeah, they're out there. There's like D Bridge is another one. Mayan Bridge is another one. I haven't used all these. So, I mean, do your own research. But so the other narratives that I think are interesting that if I were keeping your eye on the narratives rather than price, that one's
Hmm.
one. The validator clients with Fire Dancer, like if Solana, which is already pretty fast, gets a lot faster, I think that's like a narrative to watch. And also like Sol has like this natural yield that's bigger than the Ethereum yield. And I don't know, like I don't know what to say about that other than it's bigger, right? Like you're getting 7% or something on Jito right now. So sitting in Sol bags for a decade versus sitting in ETH bags for a decade, your Sol bag grows faster.
Is this a crypto decade or a real decade?
Yeah, I mean like 7.5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like a differentiator. Another narrative that I've always want to come back to is like this is my very first question about Solana was why should Solana go up you only burn infinitesimal amounts of Solana doing stuff on chain. Where does that narrative go, right? We're burning serious ETH as activity picks up on the Ethereum chain. There's no parallel in Solana. Solana could flip an ETH and it's still basically free to use.
Listen, when you're up 10x off the bottom, you really don't like asking the questions, why does this coin need to go up? You just appreciate that it does.
I ask everyone to keep that question in their mind as they ask the question of when all-time highs, which is like, what is Solana gas? What does it mean? Is it just a governance token for Solana? I think that's like a pretty relevant question. It's not a relevant question when Solana's fucking $8. Like when Solana's $8, it's like either it's completely dead or you should be buying this. As Sol starts like flirting with $100, I start asking like, what is Sol relative to the Ether token, not to the
Yeah.
chain, but to the token.
What establishes the momentum for the next part of the trade relative to what other tokens might do, which are trying to or actively solving the whole supply constraint issue.
I'd say the other narratives I'd be watching are where does this airdrop money ultimately flow? Right? We know there's big stimmies hitting Solana, but are those stimmies going to go into Sol NFTs? That would be like
And
something
for
you
what
might
it's worth,
predict.
some of these airdrops are like six figures for
Yo,
people,
yeah, yeah.
even for like relatively modest activity on app.
Yeah, I'll give a little background there. I think that's interesting, which is like this is something I did see coming when I was like the last ghost on Solana was like some of these protocols are going to airdrop and there's just not that many people to receive the airdrop, right? So you could like massively award the whales, but then you're just like giving like millions of dollars to Kyle Salami, like you are those are the whales, like multi-coin is the whales. So instead, if you want to do something more democratic, which I think is probably better for the future, well, then you spread it out a little bit more. And that means like some very little bags are getting some very significant airdrops, which is basically what happened with Jito. That's less true for Jupiter. I think Jupiter is awarding volume more. So I guess Jupiter will be a little bit more of a whales airdrop. But we don't even really know. Like I don't. I haven't done any of the analysis on this.
Yeah.
And then the other narratives I would keep an eye on are, as each of these airdrop hits, the phantom TVL of the chain just sort of goes up, right? When Jito hit, the TVL of Sol just went up. And so I'm looking at like Camino, MarginFi, these lend borrow markets that are basically the Aave of Solana. What happens to them? Because right, that's where everyone's
You
going to
said
deposit.
Camino.
Camino, which is the team from Hubble. MarginFi is another team. They have their own liquid staking token called LST. These are just like you've seen. These are like Aave compound style lend borrow markets. Neither of them currently have a token. I think both of them either have or will have soon a points system. So they're an entry. Will one of those become the Aave to Jupiter's Uniswap? That's a possible outcome.
Some people get into crypto because they think it's hard money, and then some people get into crypto because they see how much money is created out of thin air through token creation or token
Well,
establishment.
not only that, but if you think about all the money that gets injected in these airdrops, and then if people put them into lend borrow markets and
Yeah,
borrow things and then lock those things, we're starting to get into the classic
it's basically
elephant
fractional
sucking
reserve
its own
banking.
dick meme. And you know where that leads. Like that was a big part of ETH during the post DeFi summer period, was just ETH TVL up only. Was it what was the actual TVL? Let's not look too closely at it.
Yeah, this is why I kind of like. I think Masari does this, and some others. Is essentially what's the liquidity on this chain, the true liquidity.
Yep.
I think that's pretty impactful in determining your capacity to get in and out. Now, for most of us, that really doesn't matter. But if you are multi-coin or somebody like that, very few people can destroy a market. And I mean, I think multi-coin was a big part of Solana's top in the first place
Mm-hmm.
because there just weren't very many people to dump the crap out of it. But the people that were there were huge. They controlled a ton of the liquid supply. and that just marks the top when they decide to get out. Big fat people, small doors. Suzu
I
said
mean,
that, something like that.
I'll say this though, like I mean, like like on the flip side, from what I understand, Multicoin has basically just been investing in everything through the bear. So
Yeah,
one of the
they're
reasons the
yeah.
chain didn't die was there was still venture interest in Solana protocols when there were 17 people on the chain. And that was not something I predicted. I was like, who would invest in Solana right now? You're basically making two bets. You're betting that Solana comes back, and you're betting that this protocol is one of the ones that comes back within Solana. Now I'm kind of like, oh, those were pretty good bets because there's so few protocols on Solana. If you back an ETH lend borrow market right now, like get in line. There's plenty of them. Right now in Solana, it's very realistic that you could become like the number one protocol in a vertical without like, destroying 7 other teams and sucking out all their TVL, because there's just not an incumbent in lots of these chairs. The other ones that I think are interesting are Mad Lads, which is like the big NFT collection, sort of the like apes punks of Solana right now.
It can't be a punk. The Mad Labs are way too ugly to be punks.
Uh,
They look very apish to me. You
I'm
don't want to
not.
fudge your own bags.
I don't have a Mad Lad. I
You dumped it.
The aesthetics of these things I cannot comment on, but I think the team behind Mad Labs are, I believe, former FTX people, and they're doing like a exchange in Dubai called Backpack. So like,
Oh, the NFT backpack
yeah,
group. They're the
exactly.
Mad Lab. Yeah, the
And
backpack's legit.
there's
It's like
stuff happening.
executable NFTs, basically.
Yeah, there's stuff happening with like compressed NFTs that like is interesting if you're interested in that kind of thing. This is definitely not my like wheelhouse.
Yeah,
And then there's Tensor, which is kind of the big NFT market that took most of Magic
NFT
Eden's
derivatives
lunch,
and yeah.
and they have Tensorians. Yeah, someone in the chat said ugly artist bullish. Agree. Uh, and then there's also like a perp space that doesn't really have like a clear winner. There's Mango, Drift, Zeta, right? Like what is the on-chain perps, and
And
Jupiter has.
Mango's a carryover too. So there's
I
some of the stuff that survived.
I saw a talk. Mango was the one that got like exploited by that what's that guy's
Hmm.
name? Avraham, who
Yeah,
went to
who went in
jail.
jail?
And the guy from Mango did a talk at the Solana conference. And it was the most PTSD talk I've ever. He was like, and here's how we got hacked and it ruined my life.
I'm
um,
telling you, man.
yeah, so but they've bounced back. Those are like, I think that covers like most of the stuff that like I'm keeping an eye on. And a lot of the stuff is like, I've barely used it at this point. I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm looking at you all and like waiting for you to become like the class in the same way that like Uniswap, Aave, etc. are all the class of DeFi summer.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And people may not remember, but these went on 2 runs. So this Jito chart, actually, this is only a 30-minute chart because there's no history, but it reminds me a good bit of Uniswap, where instant list on major exchanges, out and pumps immediately, surprises people with how high it goes initially, has a little bit of a drawdown now, and then you probably create an environment of consolidation and relative underperformance potential, while people that want to take those gains do, and then usually has another run in it. And if people don't remember DeFi summer, all of that stuff ran hard again in January after Bitcoin did its run. So you had DeFi summer, then Bitcoin went from 10 to 30K, and then DeFi ran like mad again. And then it was the top for years. And I could imagine a price situation that's similar to that, where some of these take a back seat after they airdrop, and then when next like go round of the merry-go-round for Solana altcoins, they perform in a very, very good way. So I think from my perspective, that's what I would probably be looking for. All right, we really, really, really made people wait, but I do want to talk some price stuff, just because we got our first like major pullback, which is usually actually a pretty good thing and a strong uptrend to get what you would call like strong pullbacks. We'll start with Solana just because it didn't make it back to its 20-day moving average, but it has wicked up from the bottom, but all the way to 62 from a high of 77. I swear I've had that resistance line there for a while. Let's see what that was in relation to. Oh, yeah, my favored line from where it melted down from.
Did it pull
in the
back
bear.
on the Bitcoin? I mean, like it pretty much just dumped with Bitcoin there. Like, was
Yeah,
that?
but every other token basically just went was worse than Bitcoin, as is
Yeah.
typical, right? Like they alts, you get out over your skis more with alts, and then they go down more.
Can I ask you a
Yeah,
question? Because you're like the only person who knows about charts in my life. So like when you see that, like we know Sol has beta to Bitcoin, right?
yeah.
So when you see that, like, do you consider that a full pullback, or is that more of an
No,
expected action with relation to Bitcoin? Because I've been waiting for
yeah.
the point where people just start selling Solana because they're like, holy shit, I'm like 8 or 9x off the bottom. I should start selling Solana.
No, I think if you get that, it's because like Bitcoin has a really proper pullback that's related to macro, that kind of stuff. Bitcoin's down 20 or 30%, and then Solana goes down like 40% or
Right.
50%. And then
Right.
then you look more at these weekly charts. But honestly, in the flush margin world, a 10% move takes out 10x leverage. And if you a nice reminder is if y'all remember Arthur from BitMEX said the average leverage on BitMEX back in the day was like 8x. So those people lose all their money on a 10x on a 10% down move. So you don't need near as much to flush leverage. And one of your biggest tells is, hey, crypto's got a down day when there's nothing in the real world market that shows a reason for it. And it's because OI got overextended. People like were going down the market cap list very heavily. There's like new stuff. You just ape it, not knowing what it is. And we were doing all that over the past few days. Like people were a little out over their skis in my opinion. And this is the normal drawdown that somebody's now sweating it if they were levered up. At best, like they might have gotten liquidated even though they just 10x their net worth and they had a bunch of stuff tied through this leverage because they were going to get an airdrop and whatever.
Yep.
But this feels more typical to me and just a more dramatic response than Bitcoin, which is what you would expect. I'm perfectly fine personally if you are like buying 60 to like anything sub 70 with margin of error for how much of your stack, how much is it leveraged. I wouldn't be looking for leverage still personally in this exact territory. Like I think the leverage trade was buying 5-minute wicks in real time as people were getting liquidated. And relate that to Bitcoin, just to move right back to the 20-day moving average, normal kind of uh, trend reversal and go type stuff, and that's what we've seen across the board. There are some things that are like already just recovered well, like synthetics is a good example, and on the back of news where synthetics is eliminating some of their inflation and whatnot, but not the only one. IMX is another one where I don't even know what their news is, but it's like kind of the gaming play, I guess, and already in the green on the backside of that. And you see that it's not the case across the board. Like this is good for the market from a healthy pullback perspective, where you have some stuff that's like already up several percent after going down 10%, and then some stuff, and this is what to watch out for, is like, oh, it's still down 10%, and it's basically dragging the lows while other things are recovering. And that's always good to keep an eye on. I think you need these leverage wipes so that and establish wicks basically on a weekly chart. If you just have boom, 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 like zero wick up only candles over and over again, you're probably creating a lot of froth down the market cap list. Whereas this helps you establish more like independent coins to go do their thing. So I think that was healthy. Doesn't mean it's over. Like if the stock market tanks tomorrow or something, we'll feel it for kind of a step two. But overall, Yeah, I think what we've seen is perfectly normal and expected during an uptrend, and we might end the week red, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. We just had like 9 weeks in a row. It's like freaking tone based stuff, TD9.
I think IMX had some news about like, I don't know, they're coming out with AAA games. Does anyone ever say I have a single A game? Every
Yeah,
game I hear about is a AAA game. I haven't
yeah,
heard about
yeah.
any
We
any
got some.
minor league games.
We just got like your basic, somewhat enjoyable game. You'll probably play this for a couple days and then put it aside.
Yeah.
Please give us money. I don't know. Like the gaming stuff. I'm not a IRL gamer, so like crypto gamer is really hard for me to grok.
I think me and you are in the very small part of the Venn diagram where we're like, yes, crypto, we've never been addicted to video games. Like
Yeah,
almost everyone else is a gamer. And I'm like, hey, I don't know how to evaluate any of this game stuff. I can't even evaluate non-crypto games. So there's no
yeah,
way I'm going to evaluate these crypto games effectively.
yeah. When I was a little kid, I really liked Mario Kart on N64.
Still do.
On 007, let's go, Aaron.
Yeah.
Halo 1 was my last game. So just to put that in perspective, like
I had a
uh,
good Zelda. I had a good like Breath of the Wild run. I play like one game every 5 years. That's about my gaming cadence.
the do you remember the LAN parties where you could sync up 4 Xboxes and play 16-player Halo?
Oh yeah.
This is pre Xbox One, which is probably older than some of our audience. But yeah, yeah, that's what I did as a kid. We played Halo 1, and maybe I played a little Halo 2 as I got older, but like mostly Halo 1, 16-player LAN parties. You could hook it up in your dorm too. So like if you were all on the same network, your dorm could be playing, like, just your building would be playing
Dorm
Halo, and that
Ethernet
was the last.
networks are deeply underrated. Like today's
Yeah.
youth will never understand everyone being plugged into the same Ethernet. You could do like crazy file sharing stuff where it was like you could basically have like a intranet Napster just
Yeah, it's like,
running in your
hey,
dorm
some
building.
some guy on the third floor's got a server up, and we can watch movies off that server.
Yep. Yeah.
Those big tech, and all that you could do from a social network perspective was poke people on Facebook. No photos yet. We're just boomerang hard now, but off you go.
You could have an internet full of music that was like 50% mislabeled.
Kevin says the European mind can't comprehend dorm land parties. Yeah. All right. Well, so that's Bitcoin. I my bags don't like to see this drawdown, but I feel confident in the capacity to buy the dip and my own desire to, if we get another leg down. Like sometimes you make another lower low or create like a divergent leg or something like that. All the big stuff still looks all right. The dollar is still kind of consolidating. We'll just burn through this as we wrap up. The S&P is flat, but on the day, but like, I mean, it's basically just almost at all-time highs. I'm really not a big believer in that. I'm wondering if I'm going to have to change my tune on the stock market's capacity to get into price exploration at this point in time. That would probably be the best evidence we have of a soft landing, is that the market just starts to run. Whereas I feel like if there's going to be more uncertainty about whether or not a soft landing is possible, we probably go back to some of these like uh, longer term trend lines and consolidate for longer. And 2024 is a sideways year, which would make a lot of sense going into the election. That's still kind of my base case, is no new all-time highs until after the election. And then, as always, like just resolution of an election is usually bullish. So it wouldn't surprise me if we still don't make all-time highs for another 11 months or so, which seems bearish for crypto, but it wasn't bearish this last year. So I don't know. It kind of depends. How do we bounce on the springy bits?
We're about 30 days out from January 10th, which is, I would say, like prediction markets would say would be like the most likely ETF time. So like we're in a pretty like packed month of
Yeah, we
like
can operate
learning
on our
stuff.
own content. you know,
Until that, like I'm expecting like weird stuff during that month, and then like I would think a little sideways probably from
yeah.
there on out.
Yeah, and I personally am a believer that while the ETF launch may be a sell the news type of event, I think the market will over time start to feel the flows of passive ETF stuff, which gold is not a perfect parallel, but it's a pretty good one. Like gold mooned when the ETFs came out for years, whereas the passive element, and then eventually just blew the lid off. But as much as you think like everybody can buy crypto now, that's true. They can buy like $100 worth of crypto. Like I talked to a lot of normie friends, and they're like, yeah, I bought some Bitcoin at the top. It's like because their buying power is in their 401k.
Yep.
And 401ks don't have access typically to GBTC, but they may have liquid access to products that are utilizing a real ETF,
I,
and I think that'll matter.
I also think it's really confused. Like I think the user experience of Coinbase is still really confusing. Like we underestimate. It's like, okay, you're gonna buy this, and then you're gonna do this, and then you need to get like a crypto tax app to do your tax. It's like, hey, if you could just do that in Fidelity, and Fidelity just sends you a PDF, a lot of people are gonna prefer that.
Yeah, I agree. So overall, feeling fine. I think we we've set the foundation for a continued Santa rally, and I if we see it in a concentrated way, either in alts or in Bitcoin, then I think it can continue into January as you have that like post tax deferment rotation, which people can say isn't real all they want. It happens a lot. Like almost every time we have a bullish year, you get like this swing trade of one thing pumps in December and another thing pumps in January, at least for parts of it. And so my personal guess would be that we have some really good trades through at least the middle of January, and then maybe that's when we hit our kind of winter chill. Is February, March into tax season is not great. That's my personal
Yeah,
orb reading.
I think there's a possibility that, okay, let's say the spot ETF happens. The very first thing you're going to hear after it happens is like when ETH ETF, right? And then
Yeah.
like if you start thinking about, well, when ETH ETF, it's like, well, like when staked ETH ETF or when Solana ETF,
And then you're
right?
like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have all the ETFs.
Exactly. So it's like a party that just leads to more parties, more speculative parties. I think once we get like, there's probably a sell the news, but then there's like another form of knock on news, and I think we could have like all of 2024 like ETF speculation partying.
Yeah, and we'll finish with just noting that like ETHUSD looks really great. Like looks like a breakout and a retest right here, for example, on a weekly chart. But just relative ETH BTC, this is not a happy place to be for a chart. So that you really need to see probably 0.06 ish is what needs to be flipped to think, oh, well, it's on for ETH. Like you probably don't have to worry too much about that dominance trade, especially when there's other landscapes like we've just been talking about for Solana for so long, but like other landscapes that have more momentum and price movement. ETH is kind of this behemoth that is going to have its moment. I personally think it's going to be when the Bitcoin ETF gets announced. To your point, that could be the rotation that we see is imminent expectation of ETH ETF being next, and that creates the transition of that trade that you want.
Are you looking at all in terms of that trade at like on-chain activity on ETH? Like what is the catalyst that kicks ETH like back upwards against Bitcoin in your opinion?
The Bitcoin ETF getting approved.
Yeah. So it's
Like
basically
that's
more bullish for ETH than Bitcoin if that gets approved in your opinion.
yes.
I
Yeah.
would agree.
The anticipation of the ETF is bullish for Bitcoin and puts a drag on ETH. The approval of the ETF in with the sell the news of those early weeks is now the Ethereum ETF is going to be next. So let's do that, and then we'll sell that when it comes out. Like
Yeah.
we're not very smart in crypto. We basically recycle the same ideas over and over again. So yeah, I think that's the most sensible outcome that we look at it like, oh, it can't be that easy, and then off you go. So yeah, that's my anticipation. We're about 6 minutes over our
Uh,
normal time. This was great, Aaron. I really appreciate you coming on and giving us a new flair for weekly open. Hopefully, going to be one of these regular guest rotations, like I've talked about. with folks. Y'all can like and subscribe on the Weekly Open YouTube and whatnot. I'll probably start taking these off of the LedgerCast live platforms in the coming weeks, but wanted to make sure people knew we had two different things going on, and I'm excited about the format. And Aaron gave me some input on how to do this format as a serious podcaster himself over the years.
Podcast expert.
Yeah. So thanks for being here. Y'all can follow him at Aaron Lammer. That's Aaron the normal way, and with 2 M's on Lammer.
Masculine Aaron Lammer.
Masculine Aaron Lammer. That should be your new handle. And apparently he wanted to hype that Ohtani trade with that Dodgers hat today. So congrats to you. I guess he wanted to keep the good weather. I can't blame him. Thanks for being here. We'll catch everybody next time. Y'all
Thanks, Brian.